Welcome to Unit 5, Lesson 6 on standard form. At this point, we've talked about two other forms we can use for writing the equation of a straight line, or writing a linear equation. The first form we talked about was slope-intercept form. If you'll recall, we had a conversation about how the name was not very creative. If I want to use slope-intercept form, I have to be given a slope and I have to be given the y-intercept. The second form we learned was called a point slope form. Again, the name there was not very creative. In order to use point slope form, I have to be given a point and I have to be given a slope. Today what we want to talk about is a third form called standard form. Unfortunately, the name here is not as, doesn't give us as many clues as our other forms do. It doesn't tell us what we need in order to use this form. Standard form is just another way to rewrite a linear equation that you already have. So an equation that is already written in slope-intercept or point slope form can be rewritten in standard form. Standard form says that ax plus by will equal c. In standard form, a, b, and c are all going to be numbers. So a is called the coefficient of x, b is called the coefficient of y, and c is a constant. In standard form, you should notice that all variables are on one side of the equation and all constants are on the other. In other words, my x and my y are both on one side of the equation and c is on the other side of the equation. In standard form, the leading coefficient, or the coefficient that is out front, must be positive. And finally, in standard form, we cannot have any fractions or decimals. So we're going to have to think back to what we learned in Unit 2 about eliminating those things. We want to take the equations and rewrite these equations in standard form. We're going to concentrate on the equations on the left-hand side of the sheet, and I'm going to let you work 2 through 10 even on the right-hand side of the sheet on your own. The first example is an equation that has been given to us in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. We now want to take that equation and rewrite it in our standard form. Ax plus by is equal to c. If you'll recall, the first criteria said that x and y needed to be on the same side of the equal sign. Therefore, we're going to move this 1/2 x over to be with y by subtracting it. We typically write the x term first because x comes first in the alphabet. So this would say negative 1/2 x plus y is equal to 7. The second criteria for standard form said that we had to have a positive leading coefficient. In other words, that number in the very front needs to be a positive number. Right now it's negative. So we need to multiply that number by negative 1 in order to change it into a positive. And if we're going to multiply that term, we have to multiply all of our terms. So negative 1/2 x times negative 1 becomes positive 1/2 x. Y times negative 1 makes negative y, and 7 times negative 1 gives us negative 7. Finally, we said that to be in standard form, we could not have any fractions or decimals. I noticed that there is a fraction in my problem, this 1/2 in front of the x. I have to get rid of that. If you'll recall from Unit 2, we said we could get rid of that fraction by multiplying by the least common denominator. My only denominator here is a 2, so I need to come through and multiply each term by 2 in order to get rid of my fraction. 2 times 1/2 x makes 1x. 2 times negative y makes negative 2y, and 2 times negative 7 gives us negative 14. We are now in standard form. A, which is 1, times x, plus b, which is negative 2, times y, is equal to c, which is negative 14. Example number 3, the equation is written in point slope form. This is the textbook version of point-slope form. We can now take that equation and rewrite it in standard form. Before we do that, there's a couple of things we need to do. First, we need to distribute that 1/3 on the right-hand side. Y minus 2 is equal to 1/3 x plus 4/3. The next thing we need to do is collect our like terms. We have a -2 here on the left that is like terms with that 4/3 over there on the right. When we add that, we get y equals 1/3 x plus 10/3. We have now taken our equation from point-slope form and rewritten it in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. We're now ready to rewrite that equation in standard form. Remember that in standard form, our variables both needed to be on the same side of the equal sign. So we'll subtract 1/3 x on both sides. -1/3 x, remember we typically write x first because it comes first in the alphabet, plus y is equal to 10/3. The next criteria said that to be in standard form, we could not have a leading coefficient that was negative. So I'm going to undo that negative by multiplying each of my terms by -1. This becomes a positive 1/3 x, this becomes a negative y, and a negative 10/3. Finally, standard form said that there could not be any fractions or decimals in our problem. Both of these denominators are 3, so in order to get rid of the fraction, we are going to multiply each term in our problem by 3. 3 times 1/3 gives me x. 3 times -y is -3y. And 3 times -10/3 makes -10. We have now rewritten this equation in standard form. X minus 3y equals -10. In question number 5, we were given a slope and a y-intercept. To begin this problem, we need to begin in which form? You're correct. Because we were given a slope and a y-intercept, we would want to begin in slope-intercept form. We can now rewrite this equation in standard form. We need to move our x over to the left-hand side, so -4x plus y is equal to 1/2. We can't have a leading coefficient that's negative, so we're going to multiply all of our terms by -1. This is going to give us positive 4x, a negative y, and a negative 1/2. That leading coefficient is now positive, but we still have a fraction. We're going to eliminate the fraction by multiplying each term by our least common denominator, which is 2. 2 times 4x makes 8x. 2 times -y is -2y. And 2 times -1/2 makes -2. We have now rewritten this equation in standard form. ax plus by equals c, where a is 8, b is -2, and c is -2. In number 7, we have been given a slope and we have been given a point. Which type of equation should we start with? If you said point slope because we have a point and a slope, you are correct. Y equals 3/4 times x minus 3 plus 2. At this point, we need to distribute that 3/4. Y is equal to 3/4 x minus 9/4 plus 2. When we combine these like terms, we end up with y equals 3/4 x minus 1/4. We can now rewrite that equation in standard form. We need to start by moving the 3/4 to the left-hand side. Subtracting 3/4 x on both sides gives us -3/4 x plus y is equal to -1/4. We cannot have a negative leading coefficient, so we multiply each term by a -1, making 3/4 x minus y equals 1/4. And then we cannot leave any fractions in our problem. So we multiply each term by a 4 to eliminate those fractions. Our final answer here is 3x minus 4y is equal to 1. In our final example, we were given 2 points. The only way we start to write an equation is in point-slope or slope-intercept form. What you should notice is that both of those involve the word slope. If we find the slope here, 3 plus 3 over 5 plus 4 gives us 6 over 9, or 2/3 for our slope. I'm going to choose to plug the point 5,3 into point slope form because 5,3 has 2 positive numbers, and positive numbers are easier to use than negative. This would say y equals 2/3 times x minus 5 plus 3. Distributing, we get that y is equal to 2/3 x minus 10/3 plus 3. And when we combine our like terms, we end up with y equals 2/3 x minus 1/3. We now want to rewrite that equation in standard form. Go ahead and try this. Your final answer here should have been 2x minus 3y is equal to 1. The last thing we want to talk about today is how to graph in standard form. We have 2 different methods that we can use for graphing in standard form. Our first method is that we can take an equation that is written in standard form and rewrite it in slope-intercept form and then graph the line. Remember that to rewrite something in slope-intercept form, we need to get y by itself. If I take my equation 3x plus 5y equals 15, I can start solving for y by subtracting 3x. 5y equals negative 3x plus 15, and then dividing everything by 5, so that y is equal to negative 3/5 x plus 3. From there, I can identify my slope and my y-intercept. My slope here is the coefficient of x, which is negative 3/5, and my y-intercept is the constant, which is 3. From there, we can graph our line. We are going to begin on the y-axis at the point 3, and from there we are going to rise over run with our slope of negative 3/5. So we're going to move down 3 and right 5. And repeat the process, down 3 and right 5. Make sure that you connect your dots with a straight line, and don't forget the arrows on either end. A second method that we can use to graph in standard form is to go back and review x and y intercepts. We can graph using x and y intercepts and an additional point, because remember, we want 3 points to make our line. If you recall, to find the x-intercept, we are going to substitute a 0 for our y value. So this will say 3x plus 5 times 0 is equal to 15. Remember that 5 times 0 is just 0, so this equation ends up becoming 3x equals 15. And when we divide by 3, we get that x is equal to 5. So 5, 0 is the location of the x-intercept. To find the y-intercept, we substitute a 0 for we substitute a 0 for x, and we solve for y. So the equation will say 3 times 0 plus 5y equals 15. Remember, 3 times 0 is just 0, and so this term goes away and leaves us with 5y equals 15, or that y is equal to 3. So when x was 0, y was 3, gives us our y-intercept. We want to find one additional point on the line because we want 3 points on our line, and we can do that by picking any value for x, substituting it into the equation, and solving for y. I like the number 2, so I'm going to let x equal 2. When I plug that in, it becomes 3 times 2 plus 5y equals 15. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 5y equals 15. When I subtract the 6, 5y equals 9. And when I divide both sides by 5, I get that y is equal to 9/5. So when x was 2, y is 9/5 is a third point on the graph of the line. If I graph each of these 3 points, I should see that they are collinear, or all 3 points lie on the same line. 5, 0 was my x-intercept. 0, 3 is my y-intercept. And then I'm going to graph the point 2, 9/5. 9/5 is just a little bit smaller than 2. So it's just almost to 2, but not quite. So if I go over to 2 as my x value, and then I go up and just under 2 as my y value, I see that those 3 points do lie on the same line. Connect my dots, and don't forget my arrows.